40 contenders. 7 rounds. The road to the Coke Series ends here.
I cannot be defeated. I can take off, I don't need a reason. Anyone see me sweating, bleeding. I'm about to take off, yeah, believe it, yeah, believe it. I cannot be stopped, no, no. I cannot be stopped, no, no. I cannot be stopped, no, no. I cannot be stopped, no, no.
Good evening, race fans, and welcome to iRacing's coverage of the first race in the 2022 eNASCAR Contender iRacing Series, live from the virtual Phoenix Raceway in Avondale, Arizona. Good evening to you all once again. James Pike alongside Kenneth Bueno. And Kenneth, I think a lot of people around the community have been asking, when's iRacing going to broadcast the Contender Series? When are they going to do it? When are they going to do it? That moment is now. For the first time ever, iRacing broadcasting a Contender Series race, and I think a great introduction to a lot of people in the community who haven't seen just how tough this series can be and just how competitive it can be in these cars in the NASCAR Xfinity Series.
That's absolutely true, James. A lot of the times we talk about the heroics of the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series, but most of the time we don't document the journey to get to that series and the journey to go for that cash prize of over $100,000. There's a lot of work, a lot of preparation, a lot of hustle that goes in to the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series, and it started with the Road to Pro qualifying iRacing Series earlier this year, but this is the second step to it and arguably the hardest, James, where you've got the bottom 20 from the Coke Series, the top 20 from Road to Pro qualifying iRacing Series. You mash them all up, and this is what you get.
Here's a look at the true road to $300,000. Some people think it begins in February at Daytona, but the reality is that it begins in the eNASCAR qualifying iRacing Series, which is open to all iRacing members with a Class A oval license and a 2.0 safety iRating or higher. The top 20 of that season then get an invitation to the eNASCAR Contender iRacing Series that starts tonight. You'll see the top 20 for the qualifying series, which was run from February to September of this year, with the 20 drivers from the bottom 20 in points of the 2022 eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series. And at the end of this season, towards the middle of December, we will have 20 drivers that will advance into the 2023 eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series alongside the top 20 from points last season. Here's the full schedule for the series. Tonight we start at Phoenix Raceway. We'll go to Homestead, Auto Club, Nashville, Dover, Darlington, and round out the season on December 20th, right before Christmas, at Texas Motor Speedway, a mixture of mile and a half and of short tracks and of big tracks and tracks that will test the very best here in the Contender Series. Kenneth Bueno.
Yeah, it's definitely true. And as well, you look at round 2 of the Road to Pro qualifying iRacing Series, how diverse that schedule was in testing the field of drivers to limit that to the top 20. It's going to be the same time this time around. We're going to have all different types of tracks. You're going to have all different skill sets on display, and that may help or hurt some of the drivers in the field. We'll just have to see, but we know these guys are so talented to put it all on the stage. With the amount of tracks we have on tap, it's going to give the opportunity for every single one of them to do just that. But James, this is the first race, the first step towards getting into that top 20, so you want to make sure you put your best foot forward. And what a track to start at, then the very track we deduced a champion in the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series just 1 week ago. This Phoenix Raceway opened all the way back a while back, but this is a brand new look for this track in Avondale, Arizona. It's a different configuration from the one that we've had on iRacing for so long. The start-finish line now is at the entrance of the dogleg, or at least right before it, instead of on that long straightaway, which used to be the front straightaway, now the back stretch. It's 1 mile in length, 1.6 kilometers in length as well. Turns to 8 through 11 degrees into the turns. Dogleg is 11 degrees, and that has a lot of space, James. You're going to want to use that for momentum going into turn 1. Straights at around 3 degrees. It's a low-banked, unique oval back in 1964 when it opened. And also to note, we had our 2021 race here as well to kick off the Contender Series, and it ended with Parker Retzlaff taking the checkered. He's not in this contender field this year, so that opens the door, James, for anyone to take it away.
Right, this track made its competitive debut in the Contender Series in that race 1 year ago, and as you mentioned, Casey Kerwin was victorious 1 week ago to win the Coke Series title for 2022. Now, if you're interested in joining the fray and potentially becoming part of the eNASCAR Contender iRacing Series, you can log on to iRacing.com today for more information on how to start your career, and I think all I'll say about that, KB, is that I certainly have no business being on the track with the drivers, even here in the Contender Series. I think you and I are probably better suited up here. I believe me, I enjoy racing, but there's a certain level of talent that these drivers have. It is not easy to make it into the Contender Series, and I think you can make an argument that it might be even more competitive in some ways than any of the other series on the oval side of iRacing.
It's just an interesting meshing point, James, where again, you had the top 20 from Road to Pro qualifying iRacing Series, the bottom 20 from the Coke Series who had that experience at the top premier level. A lot of guys that are returning, a lot of guys that are new faces, young faces to eNASCAR as well. So I think this boiling pot is certainly, like you said, the most competitive arguably than any of the other series in eNASCAR history. And speaking of all-time favorites from eNASCAR, look at Ray Alfalla, multi-time champion in the top level of the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series, but returns to Contender. He's been also very dominant at this stage as well. Here's a look at him on his Legacy Sports. And how about another one? Brian LaPrade had a very solid season for Junior Motorsports there in the Coke Series this year. He's going to look to get right back to the very same spot in 2023.
You've got four-time, you've got Patriot Breyer, as he's known on Twitch, two of the most popular drivers in the Coke Series that are here competing in the Contender Series. LaPrade, of course, has plenty of experience in it, coming up through this series 1 year ago, as does the man from the Bluegrass State, Derek Justice for North Force Racing, who is a veteran of both this series and the Coke Series. He's got tons of experience here, looking to work his way back into the Coke Series for 2023, and as you can see on his shirt, at Justice on Twitch, if you want to keep his eyes on his onboard. We'll turn our attention from our bowling king to Blaze Crawford out of Fayetteville, Georgia. Love the LED lights in the back. The purple there. Purple, I think, is an underrated color that isn't used in racing enough, KB, but Blaze put it to good use for his setup and for Elliott Sadler Esports tonight.
You know, I don't see purple used in LEDs in rooms either. I see a lot of red, I see a lot of blue, I see a lot of other colors, but I never see purple. That's an interesting color, but Blaze, one of the newer faces, and we'll talk about the stories of a lot of the guys that have qualified into this eNASCAR Contender iRacing Series, and that also includes former Coke Series talent Kevin King making an eNASCAR debut here, at least his return here, not his debut, but his return here to eNASCAR and this competition, looking to get into the Coke Series in 2023. I love the shirt in the background, the jersey in the background. That's beautiful.
That would be Marshall alum Randy Moss, I think that's represented there, as Kevin King had a lot of success in the community this year. I've seen him, especially on Monday nights. He's been very, very sharp and strong, and I believe this is his first crack at the Contender Series since 2016, if my math serves me correctly. So let's take a look quickly, KB, at our race analysis and see what our drivers are going to try and tackle at Phoenix here tonight.
Well, it's not going to be the longest race, but it is going to be one that does test the strategy a little bit. We'll take a look at our race analysis and how things will fare here from the virtual Phoenix Raceway. We do go 110 laps here from the desert. That'll bring us roughly 110 miles. It's a similar mileage here from Phoenix. So there you look at it on the bottom left of your screen. Pit road speed limit at a measly 45 miles an hour. Hopefully we see a lot of the pit stops happen under yellow, so no chance of pit road speeding penalties, but green flag stops can create that scenario. You've got 31 to 34 seconds in the pit lane. Not too shabby, but they did extend this pit lane a little bit when they reconfigured this track back in 2017. We have 3 tire sets available to us for the drivers, and that's about all you got to do, James. All you've got on tap to try to get to victory.
And if you want more news, more updates from eNASCAR, including news from the Coke Series or the Contender Series or even the College Series or the International Series, head to eNASCAR.com or use the QR code that you see on your screens. It is now time to bring you the starting grid for this first race in the Contender Series for 2022. Jordy Lopez Jr. for Altus Esports with the fast time of 26.362 seconds to take the pole over his teammate Tucker Minter. Vicente Salas and Joey Brown starting 3rd and 4th on the grid. Ryan Doucette and Seth DeMerchant find themselves in row 3. A pair of Northeasterners there making up 5th and 6th on the grid. Derek Bordeaux, Cody Bias, Wyatt Tinsley, and Daniel Parafuco making it an all North Force Racing row 5 starting 9th and 10th.
When you roll to 11th, you'll find Alan Bose for Denzone Racing. He'll have Timmy Holmes to his outside for the team in P number 12. Tyler Gary in the 26 for North Force Racing. He'll have a teammate alongside him as well. It'll be the 39 of Daniel Falkingham in P14. Former Coke Series driver from last season, Colin Keister, rolls off inside of row number 8, top 15. He'll have Caden Honeycutt, who, by the way, comes into this race from Phoenix as the highest finisher from last year's contender race here at the very same track. He finished 3rd. He rolls off from 16th tonight. James Wenzel will be 17th in the 43 machine. He'll have Taylor Hurst to his outside in P18. And the final 2 in your top 20 from Phoenix include Dead Zone's Malik Way in the number 1 and the number 29 of Kevin King.
Brendan Kohler for Elliott Sadler Esports charts 21st. He's joined on the outside of row 11 by Brian Mercurio. Michael Cozy Jr., popular driver in the streaming scene, will start alongside Brandon McKissick in row 12. You go to row 13th, 25th on the grid. It belongs to Andrew Navarro. Derek Justice starts 26th. Final 4 cars in the top 30 are Christopher Hill, Blaze Crawford, Casey Tucker, and Jonathan Delaney.
We'll look through everybody 31st on back, starting with Kyle Myers in the number 81. A lot of work for him to do on the starting grid. Same deal for the driver alongside him on outside row number 16. That is number 88 of Briar LaPrade. Dylan Alt for Elliott Sadler Esports rolls off inside row 17, 33rd. He'll have Colin Bowden to his outside 34th. 35th to Boyd Hogan in the 96. Ray Alfala rolls off from 36. Then 37 to Daniel Smallwood. 38 to Christopher Pfeffer. 39 to the 7th of Blade Witt. And rounding out your 40-car field, the 95 of Parker White.
Quick note on the InSim time of day. It's October 29th, 2022. InSim right around 12:45 local time. Track temp 83 degrees Fahrenheit. Air temp 65 degrees Fahrenheit. Winds to the southeast at 2 miles an hour and 15% humidity. If you want to know what conditions these drivers are facing in sim as we get set to go. Green flag is out. Jordy Lopez Jr. leads the Altus Esports front row off across the front stretch. And we are underway with the 2022 eNASCAR Contender iRacing Series from the virtual Phoenix Raceway. And no sooner we get through the first 2 corners that we have our first yellow flag of the evening. Malik Ray sideways in turn number 1. And there were a few cars that I saw scattered. A lot of drivers that were trying to make hay on the outside going into turn 1, Kenneth Bueno. And not a surprise, you see a lot of bunched up restarts here, sort of an accordion effect sometimes, right after they take a green flag on the initial sort of restart. I have a hunch, so we're going to look at the replay, I think, momentarily, that we'll see what happened, and it will likely fall in line with something like that.
Yeah, it looked like James, a stack up there, simple as that. Going into the corner, might have begun with James Wenzel, who just got sandwiched, and then Malik Ray was right behind him. Then he got tapped from the rear by the 36 machine of Brendan John Kohler, and then from there, James, everything went haywire. Everybody was scouring away, trying to find some space to get through the wreck, and then unfortunately, a lot of those guys not so fortunate. Just again, when you have so many cars piling into the corner at the same time, a lot of lanes of usage, a braking zone in there as well, you're bound to have a stack up at some point. Here's a look for Malik Ray, gets stacked up with James Wenzel right in front of him, that Altus Esports Chevy Camaro. Malik Ray goes for a spin, everybody gets away mostly, but some picking up a little bit of damage to kick it off on lap number 3.
Yeah, so that was James Wenzel, who I think got into, I couldn't quite tell who that was, but Wenzel gets into Taylor Hurst, and then it was Brendan Kohler who got into the back of Malik Ray in the middle of 1 and 2 to send him around, and that's what brought out our first yellow flag of the evening here at Phoenix. So not too much damage to stack up. This track, it's quick, but you're not necessarily moving too fast, as we'll get another on board here momentarily. This is from Briar LaPrade's view. You can see everybody fanning out across the dog leg, and everything happens right in front of him. There's the contact right up in front of everybody from about 20th on back, and they had to check up. There are a few cars that got a little bit of damage there that will need to get themselves checked out, make sure they're okay. But Phoenix isn't necessarily as aerosensitive as a track as some of the other places that we'll go to on this series, KB. So those drivers likely more okay with that damage here than they would be at, say, maybe a Homestead or a Texas.
Yeah, it's relatively harmless here at a track as short as Phoenix. You only have 1 mile to work with, so you don't necessarily need all that straightaway speed because you can make it all back in the corners. But also to turn on to your point that you made about Phoenix not being the fastest track, you're in the middle of the corner as well. So when that crash happens, you're already on the brakes trying to make the corner in race pace, and then you're just going to hop on the brakes even further and just keep it on. You're not even really going to touch the throttle when you're trying to get away from all of the mayhem. So fortunately, most of the field escapes okay, no race-ending damage, just track position going to the biggest loss for most of those guys involved in the crash. We're ready for the restart though. Pace car is down, and it's that long wait to the Geico restart zone.
It is a long wait. When they altered this track for 2019, 2020 in real life, they didn't change the old pit wall, so your entrance is still the same, but you had this long run down the back straightaway where the drivers have to maintain pace on their own. It's one of the tricky little quirks of Phoenix Raceway that makes it just a little bit different from most of the places that we see on the schedule. But the green flag out once again. Jordi Lopez back on the gas of Vicente Salas, trying to get to the inside of Tucker Minter to take over second as they fan out and make their way through the dogleg to turn one.
Yeah, better restart this time for Vicente Salas. That opening jump wasn't really convincing out of him. It looked like Tucker Minter and Jordi Lopez Jr. could really control the field into the first handful of corners for Altus Esports this time around. Clean stretch through 1 and 2. Field all fanning through already. Some 3-wide action around the top 15. Tyler Gary on the bottom of that. Colin Keister in the middle. Daniel Budafoco at the very top. But for right now, Jordi Lopez Jr. holding control. Salas to follow.
And Jordi Lopez Jr. and the whole Altus Esports team, one of the stories that we are going to touch on a lot over the course of this Contender Series. There's his teammate, Seth the Merchant, out of Skowhegan, Maine. And we talked about them a lot for those who got the chance to see some of the qualifying series coverage earlier this year, how Altus Esports came into last year's Contender Series with a lot of pace, a lot of drivers, a lot of folks who looked really good, and then didn't really have it when it came down to the nitty-gritty of this series. Didn't get anybody into the Coke Series for 2022. They're looking to fix that this year. Tyler Gary here with Right On Board, the South Floridian, working his way through right around the 10th position. 13th to be specific, but one of the drivers who's had plenty of success in the community. We've seen him very active all over social media within iRacing. This is a young talent who I think we're going to be watching very closely over the course of the Contender Series.
Yeah, for sure, and he put up a solid effort a couple of weeks back at the homestead of Miami Speedway when we covered the eNASCAR College iRacing Series together. So if there's something to say about Tyler Gary out of Royal Palm Beach, Florida, is that he has a lot of talent, a lot of speed, and a lot of discipline behind the wheel of this NASCAR Xfinity Series car, and we'll touch on that over the course of the series as well. That transition from the lower power, more high downforce NASCAR Camping World Truck Series machines, and then you get into a higher power, low downforce car like the Xfinity Series machine, and it becomes a whole different ballgame. A lot of guys still trying to get used to that transition, but Tyler Gary, so formidable at these cars, and in a battle currently, right now with Timmy Holmes in that 67, they have not let up. This is a battle for 13th on the track, and it looks like Tyler Gary might win that fight going into turn 3.
Gary fighting to the inside of Timmy Holmes, but you bring up a very good point, because part of the challenge of this Contender Series, Kenneth Bueno, is the increased level of competition compared to the qualifying series. You can't just waltz in here. You have to make it here. But, like you said, it's also a very different style of car. You've got a lot more RPMs, a little bit more horsepower, and it's much, much more throttle control that you need and much less aerodynamic, dependent, shall we say. That's the word I'm looking for. This is a car that can be really, really quick, but it's not the momentum-based racing that you see with the cars, the NASCAR Camping World Truck Series, or Trucks, I suppose, that we ran in the qualifying series. So there's a stylistic difference in driving that these drivers also have to adjust to, and it's part of what makes this series so challenging.
And it also goes to the setup builders as well. The teams have to adjust to that change. When you have so much downforce, you have a truck that really handles a lot differently at a lot of other tracks compared to this car. You're going to build the setups way differently. So the teams, the drivers, everybody involved has to get used to that change as you ride on board with Ray Alfala, a driver that's definitely used to driving the Xfinity Series car. He's been in the Contender Series before, and he's performed rather well to get back into Coke Series competition, but he is in a hornet's nest around the top 25. And also to note, a driver right behind him on the racetrack that is not Dylan Alt on the 42, running 25th, is Parker White, who started dead last in this race, P40 after the first track. After this opening run so far, he's worked his way up to the top 25 and is looking to grab some more.
Parker White, one of the fastest drivers in the qualifying series earlier this year, and one of the drivers spearheading the efforts for Norse Force Racing, who has, I believe, 6 cars in this Contender Series. It was one of their strongest showings in the qualifying series ever. This is as deep a field as they've been able to put into the Contender Series in quite some time, and so I think we'll be asking the question throughout this series of how well does that speed translate, and how strong are they, and how do they stack up compared to Altus Sports as we go on board with one of their drivers. Tucker Minter out of Warrens in Virginia managed to see him at the NASCAR Hall of Fame last week for the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series Championship. He's now back in the rig trying to run down Jordi Lopez Jr. and Vicente Salas for the race lead.
And Tucker Minter also had a beautiful run through the Road to Pro qualifying iRacing series, picked up 3 wins total in both round 1 and round 2. Not each, but just combined all those 2 rounds. He was able to pick up those wins at many different types of tracks. Tucker Minter, a very solid driver, and actually picked up a win at Richmond, which is sort of similar in a way to Phoenix. Maybe in the banking, maybe not, but the short track racing is still in his blood. He's been able to put up great performances at this track, at tracks like these, and right now hunting down on Vicente Salas and Jordi Lopez Jr. has been able to keep them in contention, or at least within striking distance, so that is good for the driver of the 10, but for right now, all of them single file, roughly through around the top 5 or so. But again, we're going to notice the Altus Esports freight train, as maybe we can call it, over the Contender Series, just because they have a lot of drivers in the field, strength in numbers that they're trying to employ into 2023 for the Coke Series field. And right now, it seems to be working. A lot of those guys in the top 5, actually 3 out of the top 5 are Altus Esports drivers. So that tells you a lot.
Here's the one who isn't, though. Vicente Salas out of Temecula, California, driver in the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series for the past 2 years. Didn't quite have the success this time around that he had in his rookie campaign in 2021, where he was victorious at Richmond Raceway, made the playoffs. This time around, didn't finish in the top 20, dropped back down into the Contender Series, but he's had plenty of pace, had plenty of speed in the sim. One of those drivers who's not afraid to go up and grab the wheel and go after people on the racetrack. You see it now, trying to look to the inside of Jordi Lopez Jr. for the race lead. He's just been hanging with Lopez consistently since the green flag dropped. He makes the pass in turns 3 and 4. New leader, the Californian Vicente Salas in the 55.
Yeah, that patience was all worth it for Salas there in the 55. Now, I wonder, though, what Tucker Minter and Jordi Lopez can cook up here to try and hound the 55 once more as a team effort and to get back around before the moment. Salas being able to hold control on the bottom lane over the course of this run, doing a great job of saving the tires on his Toyota Supra and just being able now to have some clean air and control the tempo as of lap number 19. And Salas, you know, it's an interesting story, and it goes the same for many of the drivers who were relegated from the Coke Series in 2022, James, is that one season, even if it's a poor one, it does not reflect how quick and how good these guys are at the sim. They could have a poor season just overall due to bad luck or just due to circumstance, but when you put them in another series, you put them anywhere else, and you still know they are quick and they are as hungry as ever. Salas is one of those guys, and it's showing it right now. He is pulling away from Jordi Lopez Jr. and Tucker Minter as we cross the stripe, little by little. So Salas only going to continue to build this gap. And so far through the field, James, looks like the whole field might have just settled into this maybe long run pace. Everyone all single file. Not many battles out on the racetrack either.
Because this is a car that you have to manage your throttle very, very specifically with, this is also a car-track combo that does tend to play towards driver skill, especially over a long green flag run. You can burn off your equipment very quickly if you use it up at the very beginning of a green flag run. As you look at this battle for 17th, Brian Mercurio, Casey Tucker, Brendan Kohler, and Ray Alfala all fighting for position. So I would think a lot of these drivers are trying to maintain their equipment and make sure that they have decent pace consistently, not just over the first 20 laps that we run, but over 40, 50, 60 laps or so, where you might see these drivers come down pit road and try and split this race in half.
And also got to worry about saving that right front, making sure that you don't push up as hard into the corners as you would if, let's say, you decided to just go aggression all of the 23 laps so far, at least the ones that we've gone under green. Here's a look from Brendan John Kohler, who's going to try a little send there in the middle of the corner, try to get a better exit here on the 28 of Casey Tucker, but can't quite do it. I did see Brendan John Kohler, though, James, hit the outside wall a little earlier on in the run. I don't believe it's really affecting his pace all too much, but the tires are starting to scream a little bit behind that number 36. Hopefully we can see him stabilize before we get maybe to our first round of green flag pit stops. But he's got a lot of drivers willing to take it all away. Again, shows you how competitive this series is. You can make a mistake, and then you've got the long line of cars ready to take position. Boyd Hogan looking to the rear of Outfalla, but can't do it at a turn 2.
Like the lean that he had going on his camera, and for the eagle-eyed out there, like that red jersey that he had in the background too. I think it was pretty nifty as we go back on board with the battle, middle of the pack. This is Malik Ray, who has managed to make his way up through the field since that initial incident on the first lap. He started in 27th, went all the way to the back. He's now back up to 19th, and this is what Malik tends to do. He has his moments of brilliance in the Coke Series, but it seems like hasn't quite found the consistent pace throughout his time, but he comes back down to Contender and finds a way to make it back to the Coke Series every year. When the pressure is on Malik Ray, he finds a way to answer the call. It seems like every time his back is against the wall, and we will see how it goes for him in 2022. But so far, after the auspicious start, looks like things are starting to settle into the Contender Malik Ray that we've seen throughout the past few seasons.
Yeah, it's a good start so far for Malik Ray, especially in this run, and now he's looking on some more competition, some hefty ones at that. Parker White, Brian LaPrade, Dylan Alt, Kevin King. This is a line of cars that if he can chop one off the block, he can get multiple others in successions of laps, and in fact, they're going to go side by side just in front of him. Looks like Boyd Hogan sliding up in the middle of the corner ahead of Ray Alfalla. Dylan Alt, Kevin King going at it side by side out of turn 2, so what that is going to do, bleed off more time and reel in Malik Ray. He's going to get closer to this battle. He's going to have a nice front row seat of what he can do. Here's a look from Alt, the Sacramento, California native, a Coke Series driver this year in 2022, relegated from that series and looking to get back and having a good start so far in the midst of the top 25 as he continues to go at it with Kevin King. And how about going at it with 4-time in the midst of the corner as well?
You've seen Dylan Alt in the Coke Series. You're going to see him in the Contender Series. You are also going to see him in the eNASCAR College iRacing Series. We've seen him compete in those races throughout the spring and the fall, and it should be fun to see how those drivers get on. We'll have those broadcasts here on iRacing's channel as well later on, as you see a good look at Dylan Alt trying to fight to the inside to get to 21st.
You look to the bottom, still there. And can't quite do it again. Just going to equalize out of the corner. Salisto going to go up to the line. She's going to be ahead by roughly 0.4 of a second. But we hear some of the sounds, though, James, about what's it like to race around the competition here from Phoenix.
Let's go. iRacing full throttle indeed at Phoenix Raceway, and hear just what the drivers hear as they make their way around this track. I feel like it was sort of fitting that the last two drivers in that whip around were from our respective hometowns in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, and Miami, Florida. That was Taylor Hurst and Andrew Navarro who wrapped that up as we now go back a little bit further in the pack. Brendan Kohler, Brian LaPratt, and Parker White fighting for position. This is all right around the 20th spot, 21st, 22nd, and 23rd, respectively.
Also saw the Formula Rim as well, giving me some of the Bobby Zelensky vibes in the rig. I think maybe a lot of drivers are turning to the Formula Rim, a lot more comfortable to drive even with the oval cars. But you're right, nice battle around the top 20 as LaPrade tries to hold out hope in front of Parker White with Brendan John Kohler, and that sandwich is going to get a little loose this time at a turn 2. But again, they're going to bring in the whole gaggle of cars, and many of those we've been talking about. Kevin King, Ray Alfalo. We talked about Malik's Ray progression and his progression through the field. Andrew Navarro is also starting to peek in through it as well. In the backside, that black and white number 6 machine in his Ford Mustang. Look at Malik Ray almost looking at 3 wide into turn 1 and almost about went for the move but backed out. Going to give a slight tap to the 51 of Alfala. Kevin King's going to go for the slide job, and Malik Ray is going to look for a 2-for-1 opportunity into turn 3.
Look at Malik Ray, Kevin King, Ray Alfala. There are some drivers in this series who are new to this level. Those are 3 drivers who have been around this level for a long time. We go, though, to one of the new ones, Andrew Navarro out of Miami, Florida, racing hard, racing well, strong performance in the the qualifying series. Picked up 2 race wins, I believe, in that series to lock down his spot into contender and trying to make a few moves here for Tranquility Esports. I believe the only Tranquility driver in this field, but we've seen drivers as lone wolves, as it were, make their way into the Coke Series before, so maybe it's a little bit trickier, but it's not impossible if you've got the speed. It'll show.
Yeah, it's not possible whatsoever with the speed that Andrew Navarro has as you look on board. Again, the Formula Rim on his setup as he looks into the corner underneath. One of the most experienced drivers in the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series, Ray Alfala. Alfala is going to get the run out of the corner to keep himself ahead in P26. But you're right, a one-car effort is a little tough, and it can be very daunting and intimidating for a lot of those guys. As Alfala gets loose, Navarro is going to look to the inside on the dogleg going back to turn 1. When you have teams like Altus, teams like Norse Force, which have a whole group of cars, a whole host of guys in the mix running for spots in the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series, it can appear very tough, but for Navarro, as quick as he is, I believe he can easily persevere with the tracks that we have on the line. Navarro has been very quick at those tracks, and in the Road to Pro Qualifying iRacing Series showed us how good he can be at a diverse selection of different venues across the calendar. So Navarro can definitely be one of the forces to be reckoned with as he moves up into 26. And then we look a little up the road, James, 21st on back. These guys are going at it, and Parker White is still moving up to the field after starting dead last.
These drivers have just not come unglued, period. It seems like we turn back here, and every time it's some combination of Kohler and White and LaPrade and Alt and Kevin King and Malik Ray. They've all been stuck together for, at this point, at least half the race, if not more. So be curious to see if White can continue his charge through the field and separate himself from this group and advance up into the top 20 after starting dead last on the grid. He is the hardest charger, I believe, in the field to this point. But again, reminiscent of the pace that we saw from him in the qualifying series. He is arguably maybe the foremost of the rookies coming out of the qualifying series in terms of pace. There were a lot of people on the broadcast teams that were impressed with his pace, and we'll be curious to see if he can keep it up in the Contender Series. But so far, looking so good for White's Toyota.
And this is a strategy that Parker White uses anytime he races in competition. Doesn't matter whether it's the Contender Series, doesn't matter whether it's the Road to Pro Qualifying iRacing Series, doesn't matter if it's just an average league race on a Wednesday night. He employs the same strategy where he just hangs back, saves his tires, and then by the time you step into that long run, boy, he is going to be hounding your rear view mirror. And I've raced with him a couple of times on the sim, and he always uses that strategy and always finds a way to the front. He perseveres at the right time, and White is doing exactly that, and in fact closing the gap to Casey Tucker right in front of him in that 28 machine. So we'll see exactly how far he can continue moving up through the field, and that could be said the same here for the driver in 27th, Caden Honeycutt, who by the way finished 3rd the last time we visited Phoenix last year in this eNASCAR Contender iRacing Series, James. So Honeycutt has a lot of speed with this car and this track combo as he works on Andrew Navarro for 26th.
What a difference a year makes for Caden Honeycutt. I feel like there weren't too many people that knew his name as we see, I believe, Andrew Navarro potentially make the dive off the pit road off the left-hand side of your screen. But Honeycutt last year did a little bit of late model racing. This time around, done a lot more late model racing. Raced in the truck series as well, as that is, I believe, yes, Navarro coming down pit road for service on lap 46 of 110. Which suggests to me he might be trying to extend that second stint and maybe run a little bit long, perhaps?
I think that may be the case. You can definitely go a lot longer on a stint of fuel, especially considering the fact that we had that early caution at around lap 1 or 2. You could have saved a little bit of fuel on there if you were feeling that optimistic that the race was going to go green up until this point, which it has. But for the driver of the number 6, Andrew Navarro, we'll see if this call pays off, although he's going to fall 1 lap down. That's going to be the biggest problem. The whole field not really going to follow him in his endeavors. So it's going to be a risky call here for Navarro. He's either going to have to hope for a yellow where he can maybe stay out, maybe unlap himself, or get something to go his way. But for the moment, everybody wants to stay out. They're going to try to extend this stint as long as possible. And I believe, James, they're going to try and cut it halfway, which seems to be the safest option. You can go around 54 to 57 laps, so you can cross it to the halfway mark of the race and go on the rest of the race just on that one set of tires, and you don't really need to pit all that much. So, I mean, we'll see exactly what happens with Navarro. Maybe a 2-stopper, but for everyone else, it appears 1-stopper might be the strategy they're looking for.
You see the battle for third with Tucker Minter, Joey Brown, Ryan Doucette, and Derek Bordeaux. And the important point out of everything you just brought up, KB, is that this is a tire-predicated strategy. You're going to be watching tire wear far more than you are going to be watching your fuel numbers. It's the tires that are going to determine when you come down pit road. And in theory, if this goes green the whole way, your ideal strategy would be to come in right at halfway and split this into 2 even cycles. That, in theory, also evens out the tire wear if you run everything similarly enough. But we're going to have variations on that strategy. We're going to have people that push it and try and catch yellow. We've seen people like Navarro already come down and try and gain a little bit of time now that he may give up on the back end if we don't get the yellow. So we'll have to see how that plays out. But that's part of the beauty of the Contender Series. It is skill, but it is also strategy, and there is a mental chess game element to this race as well.
Yeah, those rear tires, most notably, James, are going to be the most important because, again, low downforce, you're trying to get the throttle out of low banked corners. Your car is going to get sideways. You've seen it a couple of times, most notably, remember the last time we were looking with the Ray Alfala, he got sideways out of the corner and had to really almost check it up to get it back righted. But tires are going to be a premium, and we'll probably see a lot of those guys extend as far as possible just because of that tire stretch. Maybe 1 to 2 lap difference will be the difference to go to the front and be able to pick up some speed as you ride on board with Ryan Doucette out of Framingham, Massachusetts, one of the quickest drivers in this Contender Series we've seen in tonight's race so far. It looks like he may be under a fight in just a couple of moments because Derek Bordeaux has been picking up the pace. You can't see it on the front of his Alta C Sports Ford Mustang, but Bordeaux is there looking to the inside in turn 3, and Doucette's going to have to take the middle line this time through as the 04 of Bordeaux looks down low. We may have our challenge for 5th.
We do indeed have a challenge for 5th, and you can't go much further north on the map in North America than Massachusetts as you see Brendan Kohler and company come down pit road, but Derek Bordeaux from Quebec in Canada fighting him, and I think that's about as far north as we go so far as hometowns for these drivers in the Contender Series, if my memory serves me correctly. Bordeaux also a driver that's had experience in the Contender Series and the Coke Series, came up through this series a year ago to earn his spot back into the Coke Series after taking a break, and has come back down to the Contender Series as we now see Briar LaPrade and a few other cars make their pit stop right around the halfway point as we noted.
And 54 to 57 laps seems to be the marker, and at lap 54, a lot of the field already looking towards that pit lane, and they're going to look for the undercut here, try to see if they can gain some spots a little earlier on in the run and maybe use that advantage to keep themselves ahead. Again, tires are going to be a premium, so we'll see how that all fares out and how far the guys in the front, most notably, stay out on the stint before coming down for their first stretch of green flag pit stops. As again, we'll look up through the front. Derek Bordeaux still hounding on Doucette right now, and it looks like Doucette's going to follow into the pit lane. A couple of more, including Jordy Lopez Jr., Tucker Minter, a lot of the Altus guys coming in collectively.
Let's run through it. Jordy Lopez, Tucker Minter, Joey Brown, Ryan Doucette, Some of the drivers that are in pit road for service right around the halfway point of this race. Vicente Salas has stayed out on the racetrack for the time being, so he will maintain the race lead, but it will bring a new crop of drivers up to second. However, Salas will come down pit road right now. Looks like he's going to bring some company with them. I see Daniel Botafuco making his way down pit road along with a few other drivers as everyone comes in, and looks like they are splitting this race just about at the halfway point on time.
Yeah, it was first through eighth, James, that went down pit road that time by, starting with Salas. As soon as he came in, everybody else followed. This was formerly ninth place. Boyd Hogan is going to take the lead this time by. He's going to have some traffic coming out. A lot of the Altus Esports drivers. Jody Lopez Jr. there, you see him, who is riding in second. He's going to try and easily get around Hogan, and Hogan's not going to look for the pit lane this time by. Neither is Parker White. So again, if these guys going to look to stay out an extra couple laps, and that traffic, I don't think, James, is going to help all too much either, because you have to have that inside line if you want to find yourself on the brakes and turning at the same time going into the pit lane here at Phoenix. And with all of these guys around you taking the position, easily gaining some speed around you, trying to find a way to get through you, you're going to end up in a precarious situation if you don't find that line, most notably going into turns 1 and 2. There's Parker White. There's Boyd Hogan. They're going to hop on the brakes. They're going to go for the pit lane, and the same deal follows for Malik Ray, a couple of car lengths behind him. So roughly 3 or so cars coming in this time through. Should be the last batch, James, of cars to come in.
And here is your current leader, Casey Tucker. And the thing I want to point out to our audience watching at home, look at the difference in speeds between Tucker and some of these drivers coming on the inside. There's Wyatt Tinsley and Seth DeMerchant. They're on fresh tires. Tucker's on old tires. This is arguably the most dangerous time in this race so far, because you got drivers racing at completely different speeds and paces. And if someone misjudges the braking point of somebody else and runs it too deep or too shallow, we could have a yellow here if drivers aren't careful. So one of those sort of stretches of laps where you really have to be mindful of who's around you and what tire strategy they're on.
And again, if you're a driver on old tires like Casey Tucker, you don't want to pit around the fresh tire cars because you do not want to get run over. Fortunately, he finds a little bit of a buffer, some space, and Casey Tucker is going to come in this time by. Not going to be the last one, though, to come in. Ray Alfalo is going to follow him to pit lane. And it looks like roughly everyone else is going to also keep in the same suit. I think Jonathan Delaney might be one of the only other drivers to stay out, along with Colin Bowden and Taylor Hurst. So they're going to move up through the running order, but we should see them pit a little now, at least at this point, in terms of how this stretch is going to go, because if they stay out a little bit too long, James, they're going to get bitten by the entire field that are on fresh tires right now. Tires are a premium, but again, you have to judge the space, have to judge the gaps between yourself and everybody else, and you don't want to be caught out by pitting too late. So there's a look at Taylor Hurst in the 33. It looks like maybe he'll try to come down to pit road this time by, but all the fresh tire cars are all around them. Not much really he could do.
So now I'll be curious to see which of the 4 drivers who have yet to come down pit road decides to stay out and play the caution strategy and hope that we get a yellow flag. You've got Taylor Hurst, Colin Bowden, Jonathan Delaney, and Blaze Crawford, all who have yet to pit. It's those 4 that are the only 4 that have yet to come down pit road. And at this point, you figure they are trying to stretch this run as long as they can and hope that they get a yellow, because they're giving up time lap on lap on lap. We'll see how it pans out for them, but for now, we will take a quick commercial break, and we will be back momentarily with more coverage of the season opener for the eNASCAR Contender iRacing Series from the virtual Phoenix Raceway.
Wanted the best, you got him for a rest. Often imitated, never duplicated. The greatest show on dirt, the World of Outlaws. World of Outlaws Dirt Racing is available now.
It doesn't matter where you're from, who you grew up rooting for, what you grew up watching, your home track, your favorite car, the series you've always wanted to race in. When you're ready to know what it's like, we're here, bringing you as close to the action as it gets with the ultimate sim racing experience. With a community of hundreds of thousands just like you. This is iRacing, and here, every day is race day.
Welcome back to coverage of the eNASCAR Contender iRacing Series on iRacing. And a reminder that if you haven't had the chance, you can pick up iRacing's first ever console game in partnership with Monster Games. World of Outlaws Dirt Racing is available now for the Xbox One, Xbox Series X and S, and the PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5. Personally, I picked it up on PS4, Kenneth Bueno, and I think the team there did an incredible job of replicating just how hard it is to control either the late models or the street stocks or the wing sprint cars, especially as you get up higher into those bigger engines, the 360s, the 410. A lot of fun. So my personal thumbs up to the team there that got that going as we turn our attention to Colin Bowden out of Suffolk, Virginia, trying to hang on to a spot near the top, waiting for a yellow. It looks like the 4 drivers who stayed out right before we took our commercial break are going to continue to stay out. So these are our 4 that are hoping for a yellow flag here and trying to ride this out and get a little bit lucky. Maybe they didn't feel like they had the pace. Maybe they felt like it was just easier to maintain on older tires. But for whatever reason, it's Hurst, Bowden, Delaney, and Crawford that are yet to pit. They're also your front 4.
And they're hoping for a yellow, James, but the problem is all the fresh tire cars are starting to get bigger and bigger in the mirror. I've been looking most notably at that gap between 4th place Blaze Crawford, the last guy in this entire group to have stayed out this long, roughly 67 laps or so, and Vicente Salas, who was your former race leader, pitted roughly 12 laps ago. They're now on roughly the same straightaway. Crawford's in the dogleg now, exiting into turn 1. Salas is around the same mark as well, coming this time by. So the gap is starting to shrink. And again, turning back to my point of what I said, you don't want to hold out hope too late because you're going to get binned by all those fresh tire cars. And the last thing you want to do is pit and lose more track position and have your risky call turn into a plan that you really have to follow through with for the rest of the race, and one that you probably wouldn't want to have if, let's say, a caution came out or something happened, the plan changed all entirely. So it's going to hurt them if they stay out longer, roughly now as we've gotten to 40 laps to go. But, I mean, again, you can never, ever predict when a caution's going to come out. That's the risk with this strategy. But for right now, they do have to worry a little bit. Salas is closing, and closing quickly.
As Vicente Salas begins to run down your leaders on old tires, here's an onboard with Daniel Buttafuoco, who, if you paid attention to the eNASCAR College iRacing Series in the spring, you saw how dominant this man was. Top 3 at Daytona, and then he won the other 2 races in the spring to pick up 4 figures worth of scholarship money to his education at Rutgers, the State University of New Jersey. And if you're interested in following along with our next race in the eNASCAR College iRacing Series, you can see that for the Roval at Charlotte Motor Speedway next Tuesday night, 8 p.m. Eastern on the iRacing channel. It's been a lot of fun to be involved with that series, and athletics and sports ball guy that I am, Kenneth Bueno. A lot of fun to see drivers racing for their schools, much the same way we would see folks play football or basketball. It's the schools, though, at the front of that series, and the schools that make that happen and make it a lot of fun.
It's kind of like our March Madness a little bit, James. Having it on iRacing. I saw you starting to nod on our cameras. I knew you liked that reference. But yeah, it's nice to have that integration between college and their growing world of esports as well, in that academic side where they get to express their love for esports and their talent as well across many different platforms, including iRacing. So it's a lot of fun, and also to know it's the first and only road course on the fall 2022 schedule for the college series as well. So it's going to give these guys a little bit of a different test compared to what we've seen from Homestead and Auto Club, and even what we're going to see in the final race of the schedule at Nashville.
Speaking of drivers in the college series, here's another one that's raced in some of those events over the course of the year. Thunder Dan, Daniel Falkingham out of Jonesport, Maine, and you can see we've seen that die-cast wall behind him a few times, but another little interesting nugget here, if you're looking closely at his onboard, notice how he's looking off to his right just a little bit. The monitor that he's driving off of and looking through to see where his car's going isn't 100% centered for him, which I think is a little bit interesting. I almost wonder if you're compensating for whatever lean you might have into the camera there, perhaps, KB?
probably, maybe just room setup, but it is interesting. I think that might be the first time I've ever seen an iRacing setup with the monitor not completely aligned with the wheel or where the setup is. So, I mean, whatever's comfortable for you. That's the great thing about sim racing, is that you can tailor your setup to whatever style you like, whether you lean all the way, whether you don't lean at all, or whether you're in a situation like Michael Cozy Jr. with his setup, a beautiful one at that, and I believe that's the Fanatec wheel as well that he's using as he tries to hold off a couple of the cars right behind him. It just doesn't matter what setup you have, as long as you're fast, as long as you're comfortable. That's all that really goes into it. And we keep an eye on Daniel Falkingham as he continues his move up through the field. And for Michael Cozy Jr., as he aims to hold off the likes of Brian Mercurio and Boyd Hogan, it's getting a little tougher there for the Alta C Sports driver. Here comes the Allegiant machine. Mercurio poking his nose, but can't quite get the move done going into turn 3.
I think there are a lot of people looking at Michael Cozy Jr. very closely, especially when you consider how tricky it was for some of the Altus Esports cars a year ago. This is a driver who now, with the experience, I think expects to make his way into the Coke Series for 2022. As he works his way through 3 and 4th. That's Brian Mercurio underneath him in the 96 machine. As you see, Taylor Hurst coming to pit road for service. So that was one of the drivers who decided to stay out. We'll see whether or not everyone else comes in too. Looks like all the other ones that come in outside of Jonathan Delaney and Colin Bowden. We can tell you Vicente Salas has reclaimed the race lead. But back to Cozy. This is, I think, one where he and a lot of his teammates, Jordy Lopez, James Wenzel, everybody at Altus Esports, they've had this circled the same way that I think Donovan Strauss had this series circled a year ago. He ran Contender in 2020, did not have a good go of it, came back the next year, dominated, made it into the Coke Series easily. I think a lot of the folks at Altus have the same sort of idea in mind in 2022.
Yeah, you could easily tell that. And even from the Road to Pro qualifying iRacing series, a lot of that sentiment was there. It recalls me to that very moment at the Bristol Dirt Motor Speedway where they had practically dominated the field over the course of that run and basically locked up 1, 2, 3 in both of the splits. It just gave me that idea that they were ready to come back. They knew how confident they were in their talent pool, in their drivers, in their setup builders, and everybody involved in Altus Esports, and they were ready for this very moment. It also helps that they've got the strength in numbers. They've got so many of their drivers in this field, a total of 7 Altus Esports drivers that we see in this 2022 edition of the eNASCAR Contender iRacing Series. So they have a lot of great guys around them, and that group can easily motivate themselves, and they can build on each other to get into that top 20 in the points and make that bid for the Coke Series in 2023. We're going to turn our attention just a little bit there to one of the drivers who had hit pit road. That is Colin Bowden in his machine in the 69. He's going to drop to 40th as a result, but he was basically the last driver, James, to come in, and I warned about pitting a little bit too late, getting bit. Looks like Bowden might have gotten caught on the wrong end of that as he drops all the way to the tail end of the field.
That is the danger, that the 4 drivers who stayed out and tried to catch the yellow ended up giving up so much time that they are now 37th, 38th, 39th, and 40th as we watch this battle off into turn 1 between Dylan All, Daniel Falkington. 2 drivers with college series experience, 2 young names who have established themselves in the community as really, really fast drivers as we look off the rear bumper of Colin Keister, who managed to go down, then out, then up, then out, and made his way back into the Coke Series, coming through this Contender Series 1 year ago.
And Keister still holding in front of Alton Falkingham, and you can see a little bit of the damage there on the rear end of his car. He did pick up some of that in the opening lap, or lap number 2 scuffle into turn 1 and 2, where he basically got sandwiched. Everybody was packing in. They hit the rear bumper, and it hasn't affected him aerodynamically all too much. Keister's still holding a lot of that pace, and now it looks like his mission for the moment is going to be to hold off the likes of Dylan Alt, the likes of Daniel Falkingham, and they do have Colin Bowden, who's looking to unlap himself on fresh tires on the way as well. But Keister basically just going to look to settle in, maybe gain some spots, maybe hope for a yellow to get him back in the game and close him up with everybody else. But for right now, if you've got your bed, you've got to lay in it. Although there are a couple of drivers trying to change the tide. Here's a look at Seth the Merchant. Under fire, James, from Cody Bias in the 27, a driver we really haven't talked about much throughout tonight.
Cody Bias, Seth the Merchant, 8th, 9th, quietly solid, but I think, you know, if you're going to be realistic and smart about it, if you can finish top 10 every single week, that will more likely than not get you into, almost certainly as a matter of fact, get you into the Coke Series. And that is the most important thing of all. It doesn't necessarily matter how you get to the top 20 in points in this series. All that matters is that when the music stops and we take the checkered flag at Texas in December, you are in the top 20. Everybody gets an equal spot in the Coke Series. Doesn't matter whether or not you are the champion of this series or the last driver in. Although, winning the Contender Series is not necessarily a bad feather in your cap and usually indicates that you'll have some form of pace when we get to the next Coke season, which in this case will be in 2023. So there are some things you can pick out of it, but just get the top 20. That's really all that matters in the end as we go back to this battle with Seth the Merchant, Cody Bias, Tyler Gary, and Timmy Holmes.
And that also highlights, James, the importance of this first race. Well, yes, you're going to have multiple other chances to get those top 10s, get top 5s, or even best case scenario, grab checkered flags from the rest of the field. This first race is your first outing against this level of competition. So if you can have a good race tonight, you can only build on that momentum going to the next race, and the next race after that, and the race after that, all the way to the Texas Motor Speedway. This first race is, again, like I said at the top of the show, putting your best foot forward in front of everybody else and showing, hey, I've got the skill, I've got the speed, and if I can continue this pace through the rest of this 2022 campaign, you bet I'm going to be in the Coke Series by the time that 2023 season begins in February. So it's very important that you maximize the opportunities tonight. Make sure you get a solid finish, and then just build on that through the rest of the campaign. We'll see on a look from another Altus Esports driver in the field. This is James Wenzel, who, by the way, James, got involved in that incident around lap 2 in turn 1. And look at him at the moment trying to work on a couple of cars in front of him, but it seems as though as he works behind Malik Ray, not much he can do. Everybody all single file.
Wenzel currently scored in the 35th spot here as we move our attention further up the racetrack. And this is Parker White, another Mainer. We've got a few in this eNASCAR Contender iRacing Series, along with Daniel Falkingham. As we've got a man who loves his simulations. You see him driving now. He's got a flight simulator stick there in the background. I can tell just looking at his onboard. So a man of all computer simulations for all sorts of vehicles is Parker White, as you get some of the great shots of the still cams from our very talented iRacing camera crew. Big shout out to them for all the hard work they're putting in this evening as we go back to the attention of the action up front. Blade Witt out of Roanoke, Virginia, working his way through the field. Currently hanging out in the 26th position.
And Blade Witt with a very quiet outing so far here tonight from Phoenix. A beautiful Ford Mustang, though, as he snacks the outside wall there out of turn 2. You can see some of the vibrations on the rig there. Did not want to smack that wall whatsoever. Looked like the car just got loose, had to try and correct it, and chased it all the way up to that safer barrier. Hopefully Blade can pick things up within the next 18 or so laps. And then you just look at everybody right now behind Ryan Doucette in this 77. It's starting to build up around here, James. Look at Derek Bordeaux in the mix as well. That's a lapped car right in front of him. Jonathan Delaney in the 12, who was one of the last drivers to pit. But then you also have Wyatt Tinsley at the rear end of this. You look at Blaze Crawford moving in on fresh tires. So some cars starting to pack in, and that may help some of the guys like Tinsley, maybe even Seth the Merchant, get a little closer just because they're side by side for a little moment.
Potentially, but this field has gotten pretty well spread out. It's pretty easy, I think, to pick off drivers if you're trying to charge through the field, and pretty easy to slide back if you don't necessarily have the pace. And I think it says so much, especially at a place like Phoenix, where you really do have to have your focus turned all the way up for all 110 laps, because it's so easy to bleed a 10th here, bleed a 10th there, then all of a sudden you find yourself half a second back of the leader's pace, and then you're sliding way, way back through the field. I feel like it's much easier to lose the time than it is to gain it if you slip up. So consistency key here, especially on a long green flag run like this on a track that is as difficult as this. And speaking of tracks that we will see as we ride on board with Derek Bordeaux, convenient that we bring the Canadian in to remind you that coverage of the D-Box eNASCAR International iRacing Series returns for the winter season. They will kick off their season at Las Vegas Motor Speedway. That first race will be 6 p.m. Eastern on November 15th. And you'll be able to watch that at enascar.com/live. That features drivers from the NASCAR Pinty Series, the NASCAR Peak Mexico Series, the Whelen Euro Series, as well as some of our drivers from the Arnard Series and NASCAR's Drive for Diversity program. So, lots of fun that we had. Had the chance to work with a lot of those folks back last winter. Really entertaining stuff. So definitely tune into eNASCAR.live or eNASCAR.com/live to check out the eNASCAR International iRacing Series. As you look at this battle a little bit further back, you've got Ryan Doucette and Colin Bowden and Derek Bordeaux all in the mix.
And you mentioned, James, that point of bleeding off a 10th here, bleeding off a 10th there. I got 2 points of that as well. One of them, Phoenix, you've got two different ends of the racetrack. You have to deal with two different types of corners, a sharper but higher banked turns 3 and 4. You've got a lower banked and wider turns 1 and 2. And it also doesn't help if you're trying to make sure you minimize the loss of time when you have a driver right on your rear end trying to take a position away. That's exactly what happened with Doucette there, was losing time. Derek Bordeaux had been catching up. Now here comes Colin Bowden, one of the lap cars in the mix as well, to break them apart. And Derek Bordeaux used that opportunity to get around the 77. And Bordeaux looks to lock up a top 5 as we close in on 11 laps to go. But one thing I also do want to point out, James, is that your leader, Vicente Salas, is in the midst of some lap traffic, roughly 3.5 seconds above Jordi Lopez Jr. in P2. And Salas is working his way through some of the cars at the rear end of the field. Got to be a little careful, though, but surely he'll be able to master it within the 10 laps to go that we have left.
A little bit of lap traffic for Vicente Salas, but this is a West Coast man taking knowledge of a track that isn't terribly far away from home for him and just dominating. He took the lead early from Jordi Lopez Jr. and has not looked back. That gap is now up to 3.5 seconds. He is well gone and does not have a lot of lap traffic to deal with in these final 10 laps. So it is all about execution for Vicente Salas to march his way towards victory lane in this Contender Series as we go back to Bordeaux and to the battle for 5th and 6th. Ryan Doucette trailing him, Wyatt Tinsley trailing both of them in 7th.
Yeah, Wyatt Tinsley just sort of hanging out in the background, one of the North Force racing cars, and actually one of the entrants, James, from the Road to Pro qualifying iRacing Series. We'll look a little bit further back from Wyatt Tinsley, one spot, and that is 8th place Seth DeMerchant. Look at another battle here between the two Supras. DeMerchant under fire from the 27 of Cody Bias. A beautiful look out of the Altus Esports Toyota Supra number 57. The 27 looks down low. DeMerchant will fight back on the high side. We've got ourselves a nice tally for P8 within 9 laps to go.
Good battle here. Cody Bias, Seth DeMerchant. Bias, who has raced in the Coke Series before. DeMerchant trying to make his way into the Coke Series for the very first time. Drivers who, I think all things considered, would take an 8th or a 9th, depending on how this battle goes. Again, we mentioned earlier that a top 10 average is almost certainly good enough to get you into the Coke Series if you can do that every single race. So this is a good start for both of them. It's semantics and very specific little points, almost nitpicking at points, if you will, that these drivers are both looking for now.
Oh, for sure. That extra point, though, those extra handful of points are going to matter, though. If you can get an 8th over a 9th or a 7th over a 10th or any of those positions you can gain, they're going to matter. And again, turning back to building momentum off of the first race. If you can get that extra position, show your speed and strut your stuff a little bit for the mid-pack positions and gain some of those extra points, it could help your tally moving in to the next race at Homestead of Miami Speedway. Bias tried to look underneath in turns 1 and 2, but could not quite clear the 57. He's going to look for a crossover heading into the dog leg. We've seen a lot of drivers use it for advantage. Bias, though, going to go the opposite way around. He's going to find space on the high side for 1 and 2. Look for the run out of the banking in the corner. We'll see if Bias can complete it. Look for the arc. He'll try to pinch the Merchant down low. This may be the magic move for Bias to take away P8.
Continuing to monitor this battle between Bias and DeMerchant, as I think DeMerchant got loose off the corner there, coming back towards the start-finish line. That opens up a little bit of a gap for Cody Bias, who sits in the 8th position now. Wyatt Tinsley is about a second up the racetrack if he can run him down in the final 5 laps. But everybody at this point, Kenneth Bueno, just trying to make sure they hit their marks, don't make any mistakes, and come out of here with wherever you might be and see where that sets you up for the rest of the Contender Series.
Yeah, again, I think a lot of the thoughts are now already turning to Homestead. If you're just single file in the midst of the field and you're just basically in your bed that you've made throughout our first 107 laps of this race as we're getting to the final 3. I talked about lap traffic. It is getting hairy around Vicente Salas. That's 3 wide. That's Taylor Hurst, Brendan John Kohler, Malik Ray all going at it. Salas going to use all the space that he can in the dog leg. It should be an easy pass, but it's going to be a little tough here as they're going to slide in the middle of the corner and make sure they stay alongside that 55. I'm sure Salas is concentrated on just getting these last laps underway, but you got to imagine, James, in any other situation, the nerves could be high, just making sure you don't make a mistake and nothing wrong happens.
I love that onboard camera shot. You saw him take a very quick look to the right down the back straightaway, just checking to see where there's cars were to his outside to make sure that he didn't jump up into them as they were 3 wide for a moment, but they separated themselves. That's experience, especially at the top level, I think, playing right into Vicente's hands. He knows what to do in situations like these. He's been around this before and is now working his way. Lap and a half to go before he picks up the first checkered flag in the Contender Series for 2022.
And what a race it's been, James, for Salas as he'll cross the line here. He'll take the final 2 laps here from Avondale, Arizona. A beautiful race put together. It felt like as soon as he took the lead, that's all really he needed. The clean air and just all the speed that he had behind this Toyota Supra to walk away from the field in this final lap. An unbelievable effort. He'll cap it off with a win.
No contest. Took the lead early, finished it off very quickly, and dominates the final 2/3 of the race. You see the celebrations on his screen and his excitement overflowing as Vicente Salas comes across the line to win race number 1 of the 2022 eNASCAR Contender iRacing Series from the virtual Phoenix Raceway.
You got to love the emotion, James, as he was crossing the line there. And, it makes me think, drivers who've been relegated from the Coke Series, you can have that feeling of dejection, a feeling of sadness when you get bumped out from the top 20 to get into next year's series and then to come down, have to deal with that transition process. But to dominate a race like this and to take a win so convincingly, Salas just proved to himself that he still got it. And that's going to be the utmost momentum going into Homestead of Miami Speedway. He'll burn it down on the front straightaway from Phoenix. A deserved win for the 55 of Salas.
And a really nice way to respond, especially after the week he's had. He left his team. He's competing as an independent driver in the Contender Series for 2022, which can be tricky, but this is the sort of talent that we've seen out of Salas in bits and pieces in the Coke Series. You think of his Richmond win last year. We know he can get it done like this, and given the similarities between Richmond and Phoenix, maybe not a huge surprise that we see Vicente Salas in victory lane as you get a look at tonight's winning moment as he burns it down along the front straightaway and into the dog leg, too, for good measure.
He's got to find a way to victory lane. There's a victory lane here at Phoenix. You could drive into it, so he'll find his way there. But a great win for the 55 of Vicente Salas for Williams Esports. I have to imagine, after being bumped out of the Coke Series, this is definitely a great way to build the optimism as he takes a convincing win over Jody Lopez Jr. and Tucker Minter. Got to give credit, though, James, to the Altus Esports cars going 2 and 3 tonight as well.
Joey Brown and Derek Bordeaux complete the top 5 in our final rundown. Ryan Doucette was 6th this evening. 7th went to Wyatt Tinsley, highest finisher for Norris Force. Cody Bias brought it home in the 8th position. 9th went to Seth the Merchant. And the top 10 completed by Tyler Gary.
And you look at 11th on back, starting with Timmy Holmes in the 67. A great outing for him after starting 12th. As consistent as you can get. Alan Bowes also in the same boat. He just dropped that 1 spot since the drop of the green. He started 11th. He finishes in 12th. Dylan Alt, Daniel Budofoko come home 13th and 14th. Alt started 33rd tonight in this race. By the way, Colin Keister started 15th. That's where exactly he will finish after 110 laps. Daniel Falkingham finishes in P16. It is the hardest charger. Parker White from P40, dead last on the grid, to 17th. It'll be 18th for the 88 of Briar LaPrade, 19th for Boyd Hogan, and Brian Mercurio. James Pike rounds out the top 20.
21st this evening was Caden Honeycutt. 22nd went to Casey Tucker. Michael Cozy Jr. finished in the 23rd spot, and Andrew Navarro brought it home 24th. 25th this evening went to Brandon McKissick. Kevin King finishes in 26th. 27th is where you'll find Blade Witt, and Ray Alfala came home 28th. 29th belonged to Derek Justice, and rounding out the top 30 it was Kyle Myers.
Look at 31st on through the last drivers in the field. Christopher Pfeffer started 38th. He finishes 31st. It'll be 32nd for the 11 of Christopher Hill. Taylor Hurst among those drivers who pitted the latest out of everybody else. He finishes 33rd. Brendan John Kohler, the first car, one lap down in 34th. James Wenzel to round out your top 35. Then it's Malik Ray, Daniel Smallwood, Jonathan Delaney, Blaze Crawford, and the 69 of Callum Bowden. All of them finishing one lap down, 34th through 40th. That is your entire field here tonight from the virtual Phoenix Raceway. But we do have a winner convincingly, and that is the number 55 of Vicente Salas. And Vicente, just walk us through this race. It looked like ever since you got by Jordi Lopez Jr., you never looked back, you never faltered. How much does this win mean to you in the way you were able to do it?
Lots happened in the last week that's definitely, changed the course of iRacing for me and the way I look at it. Really seeing the people that care about me, the people that are there for me. I owe this win to 3 guys. We are a small team. Dave is the mastermind behind this car. He killed it on it. Jonathan Platt spotting, keeping me calm the whole entire race. And Carson Hosevar for being there, supporting me and, giving me the real life instructions. So, huge thank you to those guys. I can't believe we did it.
I saw the emotion that you had as you were crossing the line. Certainly this win meant a lot, but you've got the highest mark in the point standings out of everybody else after the first race. What's the mindset now with this win going into Homestead and the rest of the tracks on through the schedule?
I feel like we've got a really good base for Homestead. The goal is always just going to be to come and do this. It's always the bar, and especially, with us being knocked out of Coke, I think this is a season we need to rebuild and kind of relearn things. So I'm really excited for the next one.
On the redemption arc for 2023, and you kick it off with a win here in this eNASCAR Contender iRacing Series. Vicente, thank you so much for joining us. Congratulations on the W. We'll see you from Homestead.
Thank you, guys. And real quick, if I could thank Williams Esports, everyone that supports me, Miramar Financial, all of our partners, all my team guys that support me, my mom, my dad, my brother, my grandma, my grandpa, and just everyone that supports me. My go-kart team, Luis, Billy, Luca, everyone that supports me. You guys are awesome, and I wouldn't be able to do it without you guys. So thank you, and all glory to God.
Vicente Salas with the convincing win here from the virtual Phoenix Raceway. We'll toss it down to third place finisher Tucker Minter, and Tucker coming off a strong 2022 Road to Pro qualifying iRacing Series season. You started off in the Contender Series with a third place. Walk us through how the race went.
Yeah, fortunately from the front it was pretty straightforward. I kind of messed up 3 and 4 my qualifying lap. Really wish I'd gotten pole, but Jordy did an awesome job, and Vicente, obviously, he had a great car, and he's a good driver, so it was going to be tough to beat him. I was super loose the first run. I was just barely able to hang on. I don't know what happened, and then the second run, it kind of just felt normal again. So that's about how our race went. Luckily, it was pretty uneventful.
Well, certainly a clean race for you. You had a couple of teammates around you. Walk us through how important you and your team are going to work together, or how important it is to work with you and your team now after Phoenix, moving through the rest of the schedule.
Yeah, everybody on Altus does such an awesome job of working together. It was a little bit more difficult tonight because Jordy, he was on a hot spot because the internet at his apartment went out, so we couldn't really talk to him, but I was able to get feedback from Ryan and Merch and everybody else on what they were doing, maybe to be a little bit tighter the second run, stuff like that. And then just for the rest of the season, it's going to be about just all the preparation, hard work that goes into it. Each of us brings our own unique perspective and everything to the table when it comes to building qualifying sets and building race sets. And we're super excited to have Chris on our team as well. He's done an awesome job so far.
Well, a great finish tonight on the podium here from the virtual Phoenix Raceway. On behalf of our team, Tucker, want to send you a congratulations on the third place outing here from Phoenix. Looking forward to seeing you at Homestead in a couple of weeks' time.
Yep, looking forward to it. And thanks to everybody at Altus, like I said before, and our partners, Logitech G, Virtual Racing School, and everybody else that supports us. And thanks to my family for watching at home.
So that is third place finisher Tucker Minter on behalf of Altus Esports. We talked to Vicente Salas, a great win for him. And then we get to look forward to, James, my favorite track, my hometown track, Homestead of Miami Speedway. We had a clean one tonight from Phoenix. We can only imagine what Homestead will bring.
Right. We do go to Auto Club later in the season, but Homestead Miami, your home track, Kenneth Bueno, a place that you know very well and a place that has played host to a lot of really great stuff. But for all of our friends at iRacing and our team behind the scenes, and for Kenneth Bueno, my colleague at the booth tonight, I'm James Pike. Thank you so much for watching our coverage of the eNASCAR Contender iRacing Series, and we look forward to seeing you next Tuesday night from the virtual Homestead Miami.